Hello and welcome to day 5 of 7 days of Halloween. Hi everyone, it's Monica and welcome back to day 5 of 7 days of Halloween. Well, today I'm going to be sharing with you a new technique. Well, it's not really a new technique because I'm sure a lot of us have seen several designers use the alcohol lift ink, and they've created some fascinating and fabulous designs. But today I'm going to go ahead and share with you my process for using it. Now, keep in mind, this is the first time that I've used this product, so hopefully you'll like what I'm sharing with you. What I am using today for my stamps is the Tim Holtz retro stamp set, and if you recall, I used it earlier in my series. And then I'm also bringing back another set that came out last year, which was the Halloween Haunted House set. Now, the alcohol inks that I'm going to be creating today with are some of the darker colors, because what I'm going to attempt to do is to create what would look like a negative if somebody were to get an X-ray. And the stamp that I'm going to use is my skeleton stamp. So the idea is cool. Let's see if I can pull it off. So the first thing you have to do, of course, is to get a non-porous piece of paper. And the paper that I'm using today is just glossy paper, nothing special. I haven't actually purchased any Yupo paper, or I should say I didn't have any purchased when I had created this video. Since then, I have bought some Yupo paper, and I hope to play with it a little bit more. But when you're using your alcohol ink, there's really nothing special about my process. All I'm doing is I'm adding alcohol ink, and it's going to be dark colors because I want to create what would look like a negative from film. So I'm just using some dark colors, and I'm throwing in some red just to add some blood, I guess is what I was looking for some Halloween. My process, of course, is just very simple. I'm just adding my colors to my blending tool, and then I'm just adding it to my non-porous piece of paper. And then when I'm happy overall with the look, then I will just let it dry. If you've never used alcohol ink before, it does dry fairly quickly, so there's not a lot of waiting time. And I don't typically use my heating tool when I'm working with alcohol because, again, the drying time. Okay, so once I was happy with my background, it was time to use some of my lift ink. And I am going to be using my Misty for this process. Now, one thing that I want to share with you, which is a big no-no, and I did it, of course, is when you are using your alcohol lift ink, you don't want to double stamp unless you've cleaned your stamp that you're working with. And of course, using my Misty, I'm so used to double stamping that it didn't really occur to me. It was just second nature. So of course I contaminated my ink pad. I'm hoping that it won't completely ruin it, but I wanted to just throw that out there, that when you are using this alcohol lift ink, just be really conscious and pay attention, because if you are using your Misty, so many of us are just so used to double stamping, and that's exactly what I did. I stamped, and then I went and I stamped again, and then I'm like, oh no, I probably shouldn't have done that. You need to clean your ink off of your rubber stamp. So just a big warning for that. That was the only thing that really bothered me about this process, is I'm not used to cleaning my stamp after every stamp that I make. But I definitely want to do it for this one. And perhaps I didn't need to double stamp it. It's just something that I typically do because I want a nice crisp image. All right, so once you get past that hurdle and you stamp your image, then what you want to do is you want to take another piece of paper, because you have some of that transfer ink on your image, and you want to go ahead and transfer that ink onto some paper. Now, this doesn't have to be the non-porous paper. This just can be regular cardstock. And then any residual ink that you have on your stamp will, of course, transfer onto your paper. All right, so after you've transferred your residual ink, then you're going to want to go back to your original image. And there's a couple things that you need to do to make that image show up. Number one, you're going to want to get a paper towel or a napkin, and you're going to want to blot that ink up. You don't want to swipe it, because if you swipe it, you're going to end up smearing it. You just want to blot it. And what you're doing here is just lifting up some of that alcohol lift ink that might still be wet. And then after you do that, you want to take a piece of felt. I'm using felt. You probably could use a towel, but I wanted something really soft, so I went for my felt. And then you're going to just to kind of buff your image, and that will then bring out the image that you've stamped. Now, if you look at it straight on, it's hard to see the image, but when you actually tilt the card, you can see the skeleton stamped image. And that's really what I was looking for. If you look at a negative, of course it looks dark and it looks black. But if you turn it to light, then you can see the image. And that's what I was trying to recreate, was a negative image. And then I took that negative image and I used my tonic mini snips to cut around my skeleton. Now, when you're cutting a glossy paper, it's a little bit more difficult to cut, so you just want to take your time. And then I also took a die that I had to create a film strip die, because again, that's kind of the theme that I'm going for. Now, for my background, I did want to have some spider webs, but I didn't actually purchase the Tim Holtz spiderweb background stamp. I try to limit myself to just a couple of new stamp sets per release, just because the pocketbook can definitely take a hit. So instead of using that stamp, I just created my own background using spiderweb, and then I printed it on my printer, and it worked fine. And then I adhered that to some black cardstock. And keep in mind, this is going to be my background, so it's not really my focal point, so it was easy to create my spiderweb background. All right, so once I was happy with my background starting point, then I took my haunted house and my black archival ink, and I started to create my scene. Okay, so once I had my background all stamped, then it was time to add my skeleton and my my negative. So I went ahead and I just kind of played with my design a little bit to see exactly how I wanted to place it. Now, I wanted my skeleton leg to go through the opening of my film. So I made sure that I kind of placed it, and then I glued it on just so it would hold itself in place. And then I took some of my thin foam tape, so that way my skeleton would pop up just a little bit. And then once I had my skeleton and my film strip added to my card, I wanted to add just a few more details. So I did come in with that little spider stamp that you see on the top right hand corner, as well as some of the bats that were part of the haunted house set. I also went the extra step after I stamped my spider and my bats to add some yellow Copic colors in the windows of my haunted house. I wanted it to look a little bit eerie, and the yellow, it just gave it a nice glow. Now, if you don't have any Copic markers, you can still get that effect. If you have the yellow distress crayons, all you need to do is take some of that crayon and rub it onto your craft mat, and then add a little bit of water to it, and then take a paintbrush and you can color in some of those windows. And then, of course, you can easily use colored pencils as well. It doesn't have to be a Copic marker. You can use any type of coloring method that you like. I think probably even a watercolor would work, because of course if you are using your Copic your distress crayons, then you're going to be adding a little bit of water. You just want to make sure that you take a paper towel and dab it, so that way it is nice and dry. All right, so once I had my windows colored in, I wanted to add one final detail. And again, the details are in the card, right? I mean, I could have easily left it as it was, but I wanted to add a toe tag to my skeleton. And this is a cute little printable that I made using my editing software. And then I also added them to my Etsy shop. So if you do want to get a toe tag for your cards, I will leave a link in all of the product lists below for this little toe tag. Now, the Haunted House stamp set is from last year's release. So if you haven't picked it up or you just weren't able to get it last year, you can find it for a pretty reasonable price. What's really nice about some of the older releases is you can get them for really good prices. Many people are focused on the new releases, but there's still some great stamp sets from prior years. So don't feel like you have to jump on that bandwagon and buy all of the new releases. Save some of your budget for some of those older releases because there's some great sets out there. What I really like about the Haunted House stamp set is not only does it give you some great images to create a scene, but it also gives you some really great sentiments as well. And the sentiment that I used for the inside of my card did come from that Halloween Haunted House set. Now remember, when you are creating your cards, especially when you want to give them to somebody, because after all, that is why we're creating cards, is to make somebody's day. You want the inside of your card to be finished as well. I mean, yeah, I guess you could easily just leave it with the white space and type your note, but I like to add some cardstock to mat my white piece of paper that I'm going to be stamping on, just to make it look like a finished card. And also, I really like the weight that I get when I finish off the inside of my card. So be sure to take those extra few minutes to finish off the inside as well. All right, so this completes my day 5 of my 7 days of Halloween series. Hopefully you've had fun along the way, and don't forget, we have a couple more days left, and my last 2 cards are really fun, so hopefully you'll stick around for that. As always, I will leave a list of all the products that I've used to create this card, along with the links to the stores. If you've enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave me a thumbs up. And if you want to be entered into my drawing to win one of the stamp sets that I use in my series, be sure to leave a comment on every single video. And of course, it goes without saying, you have to be a subscriber to my channel. All right, everybody. Thanks for stopping by today, and I hope that you've enjoyed day 5 of my 7 days of Halloween. We'll see you again tomorrow.